In section 1.7 we're dealing with inequalities. Now an inequality is something that has an inequality symbol in it, in the same way that an equation is something with an equal symbol in it. Okay, so x is more than or equal to 1 is an inequality, and if you want to show that on a diagram, then this is the way to do it over here. You put a full circle, a circle that's been filled in, and then a line with an arrow to indicate that the solutions keep on going forever in this direction. So x is more than or equal to 1, has a full circle, and then everything to the right. If you just have, if you don't have the equals part in the inequality symbol, for example, here we have x is less than 3, then we put an empty circle instead. The empty circle means that you're not including 3. X cannot be equal to 3. So x is less than 3, we can write starting here and then going to the left. And again, the arrow indicates that we keep on going forever in this direction. Now there are some properties of inequalities. Now this looks more complicated than it actually is. We have something called the transitive property, which means that if A is bigger than B and B is bigger than C, then that means that A has to be bigger than C. Right? B is therefore in between the two things. So if you know that 9 is bigger than 7, and you know that 7 is bigger than 3, that automatically follows that you know then that 9 is bigger than 3. And then another very simple property is that you can basically add a number to both sides of an inequality. So for example, if you have A is bigger than B, then you can add C to both sides of that inequality. So if you have something that says 8 is bigger than 5, then that means that 8 plus 2 is bigger than 5 plus 2, if you, for any reason, needed to say that. The same thing applies for subtracting. You can subtract a number from both sides of an inequality. So if 8 is bigger than 5, then 8 minus 3 is bigger than 5 minus 3. And it's exactly the same thing for multiplication. If 5 is bigger than 3, then okay, you can multiply both sides of that inequality to get 5 times 2 is bigger than 3 times 2. Well, you have to be a little bit careful when we have things like that, because that requires that we have the number that you're multiplying by, your C, must be a positive number. Now there's a danger. If C is a negative number and you multiply both sides by C, then what happens is that you have to flip the inequality symbol. You'll notice that this symbol here, this symbol here, which is the 6 is bigger than 2, has to be changed to be a less than symbol here. And that's something you must remember. When dealing with inequalities, if you multiply both sides by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality symbol. The same thing applies to division. If you divide both sides by a number, by a positive number, then there's no problem. Right? So 5 is more than 3, becomes 5 divided by 2 is bigger than 3 over 2. There's no problem there. However, if you divide both sides by a negative number, then we have to remember that the inequality symbol here, the bigger than, changes to a less than. Right? So if you're dividing both sides by a negative number, please remember you've got to flip the inequality symbol. With reciprocals, something strange happens with reciprocals. Reciprocals, remember, is when you have 1 divided by a number and 1 divided by a number. So if we look here and we think about what would be 1/2 compared to 1/3, well, would you rather have 1/2 of a pizza or 1/3 of a pizza? Well, if you're me, I'd rather have 1/2. So 1/2 is more than or equal to 1/3. Notice that in this case, we've flipped the inequality symbol to do that. Right? We've changed from less than or equal to more than or equal to. So with reciprocals, we have to flip the inequality symbols also. And in this last thing to do with addition, if we added 2 and 10, how would that compare with what we get when we add 3 and 20? Well, the 2 and the 10 would be 12, the 3 and the 20 would be 23, so the 12 would be less than the 23. And that belongs to this property over here. This property, the a plus c is less than or equal to the b plus d. Now basically, to summarize all that, if you want to solve a linear inequality, what you've got to do is really just do the same steps as you would do for an equation, except that if you multiply or divide both sides by a negative number or a negative variable, you've got to change the direction of the inequality. That means go from bigger than to less than, or from less than to bigger than. And that's it.